Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. As always, if you enjoy these videos, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Our first story of the day is by Grey Wolf Pack, You're Too Slow. For context, I, undergrad student who commutes to uni, have been studying at home since March 2020 due to COVID and subsequently uni shutting all the campuses. Because of this, we haven't had access to the uni library, a lot of the books and journals we needed were behind paywalls online, and some primary documents that aren't online at all. Fast forward to a few weeks before this year's final exams, uni sends out an email saying the library is now open again and has bookable study spaces. I book a space so I can access the resources again to study for my exams. Get into uni no problem, sit down and begin to study, but after 10 minutes the librarian walks in and comes over to me. They say, "What are you doing here?" I say I booked a study space for today. They say these spaces are only for people who need them. Look around the completely empty library and ask to be allowed to stay, seeming as no one else was there. Librarian says I have to leave in 20 minutes. Go back a few days later, but only to borrow some books to study at home instead. As I'm going to the relevant shelves to collect my books, librarian approaches me again. They say, "What are you doing?" I say, "Collecting some books to borrow." They say, "I told you you're not allowed to be here." They begin to rant about how I'm a COVID risk, whilst being right in my face, etc. I try to explain that we were told we're allowed to come and borrow books again for our exams. I even show the email on my phone. And that I'm following all COVID regulations. Mask, distancing, even had a quick PCR test the day before. Also note that the library's empty again, and there's nobody on the entire campus apart from the receptionist, librarian, and a couple of chemistry students. Not good enough for the librarian, however, who tells me that I'm too slow and that unless I run in, grab the books, and get out, I shouldn't come back to the library. Cue malicious compliance. Put some joggers on, lace up my trainers, and make my way to the uni to return books after my exams. Scan my ID, walk past the receptionist, put my bag down and take the books out. 3, 2, 1, go. Dash through the corridors, half the lights are off because no one's on campus anymore, up the stairs, swing the library doors open and start weaving in between the shelves. Librarian yells, "Hey!" but I don't turn to look. Get to the corner, sling the books in the returns bin, and bolt back out before the librarian even gets up from behind their desk. Make my way back downstairs, grab my bag, walk calmly past the receptionist, wishing them a nice day, and leave campus. Apparently, the librarian went ballistic and filed a bunch of complaints, but surprisingly, nothing came back to me. I've since discovered that this librarian complains about students all year, so complaints about me must have just been ignored by management. I wouldn't usually pull a stunt like this, but this year's been really hard academically, and we've been largely ignored by the uni. I was just trying to study to pass my exams, so I didn't appreciate someone like this librarian being so insensitive. So in circumstances like this, if somebody kind of calls you out or challenges you to do something, even if they're probably meaning it sarcastically like the librarian is as far as running in and grabbing the books and getting out, would you take somebody up on an offer like that and actually go ahead and do it? Let me know if you'd be rebellious in that way in the comments down below. This next story is by Bakui7, This Job Stinks. This is my father's story from many years ago from when he worked with a surveying crew for the city. I think they work in groups of 3. One day, their van broke down and they were told there was nothing available for them to drive. Just take the bus for the rest of the week while repairs are being done? They did, out of totally non-malicious compliance. It was very inconvenient, but they made it work. After the end of the second week and no van, they complained. Their manager tried to intervene, but his boss basically yelled, saying the parts are too expensive, and he didn't want to hear taxpayer complaints about wasting money. He wouldn't because his job is too far removed from that. The bus was free for city workers on the clock, so it saved his department money. This didn't sit well with my dad's crew, and their opportunity for maliciousness came quickly. Surveying is often taking elevations of various benchmarks scattered around the city. Sometimes, however, they got work orders to take invert elevations of sewer lines. Usually it's just one worker that has to go down the manhole to dip the stick. But they all made sure to pack rubber gear for everyone that day, and they all went down, splashing around a bit more than necessary. They waited until close to rush hour before taking the bus back to their base yard, and made sure to tell everyone who they were, why they were on the bus, and how if they didn't like it, to complain to the mayor. Well, the passengers certainly did raise a stink, and none of those complaints had anything to do with wasting taxpayer money. They had a van very soon after that. If there's one great way to get exactly what you're wanting, it's generating an angry mob to go directly for the person preventing you that thing. In a lot of cases, that can be morally wrong, but in this case, I think it's just correct for the worker's sake of convenience. This next story is by Big Chip Donahue. You want me to keep digging? You got it. Since the pandemic started, I've been living with my sister and my parents in at home. I'm pretty grateful that I get along with my parents and my sis, and things have been pretty smooth sailing given the circumstances over the past year or so. That being said, my dad is pretty my way or the highway with most things, always very controlling when it comes to keeping the house clean and the backyard manicured. He bought a lawnmower, trimmer, and blower this past spring and tidies around the house probably twice a week. I love him, but gosh darn does he need things to be clean and will not waste an opportunity to complain things are messy and ask us to do mundane tasks, like refilling the toilet paper when we have many extra rolls. I'm pretty understanding, and my dad's just a little on the neurotic side, but he's just so uppity about it that it's hard not to get annoyed at it. So a couple weeks back, my dad notices the flower bed in the backyard isn't doing so hot, or rather, it's doing too hot. The trees above give pretty normal shade to most of the garden, but lets the sun absolutely bake the flower bed. Not much you can do about it, just a small quirk of the backyard landscaping. My dad can't look at that without thinking, this needs to be solved. But instead of planting a sun-loving plant, he decides it's the soil's fault. Somehow, he makes the connection that the soil might have been salted by accident or something, and my dad asks me to dig out the dying flowers, clean out the soil, put in new soil, and replant the same dying flowers. I'm a bit confused because it's pretty obvious the sun is the problem, but once my dad decides he solved the problem, it's solved. So after a bit of an argument, I cut my losses, except that I'm living here rent-free, and go clear the soil, repot the flowers, and give them a nice watering. 1 week later, and the flowers are dead. My dad gets it in his head that somehow I didn't get rid of the old salty soil, and after some more arguing over how the sun works, I'm off to Home Depot for more flowers and soil to plant new flowers in new soil. This next batch holds for maybe 2 weeks until the inevitable heat death of the flower bed comes about, and my dad's left with a second batch of crisp flowers. Yet again, it's my fault for not getting rid of that darn salty soil, so he says, OP, do not stop digging until you get rid of every last inch of old soil. Here's the thing, some of our flower beds are placed over canvas fabric, which separates it from the ground soil, a geotextile fabric to keep things level. Which is what my dad thought I was digging down to. This flower bed was not one of them. There is no bottom. My dad leaves to go for a bike ride, and I start digging. And keep digging, still digging, lunch, back to digging. My mom and sis decided to chill outside with me, my mom telling me this was ridiculous, and my sister cheerleading me forward. My dad gets back home before dinner, and I'm about waist deep in an 8-foot long by 4-foot wide pit with a huge ring of soil around the edges, dirt all over the backyard. He barges over, smoke coming out of his nostrils, yelling at how I'm destroying his garden, asking what the heck was I doing. I just said, well, I don't think I can get rid of all the old soil, but a couple more days of this and I think we'll be pretty safe. My sis starts laughing her butt off, and my dad has absolutely no recollection of his words until my sis starts to remind him of what he said. Looking forward to tomorrow, when my dad's gonna have to help me refill the pit and come with me to a local garden center to pick out some sunflowers. Yeah, I think this is just one of those situations where you accept that you're just not going to win, whether that be because they just won't accept your argument, or the fact that it just makes sense for your living situation not to rock the boat too much over whether or not the sun's baking the flowers. Either way, eventually they'd figure out that it was the sun and not salty soil. This next story is by Location IX, Job Posting Mayhem. Near a couple of decades ago, I was doing an entry-level job in human resources and recruitment administration. I had a boss who was so difficult to work for, her average new hire lasted 6 months. She had a thing for hating Asians, Middle Eastern, disabled people, black people. She made it known from the very first meeting, "You're not the hire we were hoping for," and "If you were going to come to us in a wheelchair, you should have finished a master's first." I needed the work at the time and went with it, hoping things would improve. I remember one meeting she questioned me on why I hired someone who indicated they were born in India, when there were plenty of Canadians to choose from. Not a welcoming place to be if you're different from this mold. To this day, one of the most toxic and poisoned companies I've ever worked for. She had a thing about administrative integrity. Client is never wrong, keep them happy and never question them. Support their bad decision making even if it's wrong. Hiring someone with office administration experience, they had to exactly match office administration the clients wanted and match that against resumes. If someone said they did office administration but didn't include sorting pens in their resume, they had to be screened out despite very obviously having the experience and capability to do the job. My job was to screen resumes and post jobs on the corporate applicant career portal. That's it. One day, I was reviewing a job description the client had sent our division. It had numerous spelling errors in it. As per her rules, we were not allowed under any circumstances to edit the copy the client sent us. One day, I made the unfortunate mistake of changing a comma at the end of a paragraph to a period, only to get dragged into her office and screamed at under no circumstances do we ever change the wording of what the job description says. It was a late Friday afternoon when I had an information manager job description come in. One of the typos had included the word buts instead of assesses all throughout the job poster. The successful candidate will need to be willing to sift through butts worth of technical info, or a strong acumen to butt is essential in this role. Great buttment skills are needed in this role. For reasons unknown, the employment equity section included the word no in front of it in bold, and the salary had an extra digit in it. It looked like someone had typed it all word for word from someone's bad handwriting. Common sense would indicate this wasn't something to go out, but it was late Friday, and I was informed that I had to launch all their job postings without any hiccups or delays. Everyone else had gone home, so I did exactly that. Launched this word for word without changing a thing. Monday rolled by, and I got such a reaming out the walls shook. I left shortly after this. They had dragged my boss downtown to corporate on a Saturday to fix it after so many complaints went up to the CEO themselves about that particular job posting. The portal was buggy, and because their back-end system was slow, it didn't allow edits of files already live without contacting IT, who is off for the weekend. So for weeks, the posting was visible on all of the job sites as it was initially launched. I learned a lot from how not to work in HR from her. Exactly everything I learned from her, I eventually ended up doing the complete opposite of. This manager to me seems like a speed run or something of trying to be the worst manager possible. It's like a crash course on how to do everything absolutely wrong. You want to learn something? I'll teach you all the wrong things to do. The client is infallible, and it doesn't take much butting to figure that out. And our final story of the day is by Kvefe and Hamburgers. There's a font for that. Around 20 years ago, my organization migrated from GroupWise to Outlook. Our IT department took that opportunity to also begin managing permissions on workstations, locking down most machines to basic functionality. At the time, I needed admin access on my machine to install various utilities to be able to do my job, and quickly got annoyed with needing to call IT every time I wanted to test a new piece of software for the department. Then I discovered that fonts also required admin access to install. Cue malicious compliance. Day 1, I say, "Hi, I need to install insert font name here on my computer, but it requires admin access." Help desk says, "I'm happy to help you with that. What's your PC name?" 5 minutes pass. "You're all set." I say, "Thank you." Day 2, "Hi, I need to install insert font name here on my computer, but it requires admin access." Help desk says, "I'm happy to help you with that. What's your PC name?" 5 minutes pass. "You're all set." I say, "Thank you." Day 3, "Hi, I need to install insert font name here on my computer, but it requires admin access." Help desk is silent. I say, "Hello? Are you there?" Help desk says, "Are you interested in having admin access on your machine so you can install your own fonts?" I say, "Sure." 20 years later, I'm still granted admin access on all of my new computers. I mean, personally, I don't blame them for doing what they did. It's just good security, right? It's just sometimes they need to pick their battles. Some people do need the access, and they need to be flexible for that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So with that being said, which of these stories was your personal favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't, if you could like and subscribe, it would mean the world to me. Anything you do, whether it's liking, commenting, or just viewing the video, it all helps grow this channel so very much, and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.